Hey, Ashley.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us. For those joining for the first time, I'm Ashley, the co-founder of Ventana. Been working in the 3D graphics CAD space for about 15 years. And at Ventana, we help make it easy to manage and distribute 3D files with all types of industries. So today I asked my good friend Lord Walker to join me to talk about how his company is using 3D. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm flattered and it's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to sharing as much information as I can. I actually used your tool on Monday, so I'm looking forward to where the questions go, and I give you a nice little ad hoc story of how it worked and a really great application.
Awesome. Cool. And so just for background, so you're tell us about like your current role in Kanawa, which is now part of American Equipment.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. So I'm the senior manager for loading systems. So that specifically works around putting any type of dirt into rail cars or trucks, predominantly, or other containers. We've been in this space and manufactured this equipment since 1978, and most recently, we are now a part of we're underneath the American Equipment Holdings or umbrella, and we're now one of the largest lifting and rigging and weighing companies in the United States with coverage all over. So yeah, that's a general gist of what we do at Canal Scales and American Equipment.
yeah, it's awesome. And we randomly ran into each other at the World of Asphalt, which was just so insane. And it was so good to catch up. And now I'll see you next week at Mine Expo, which I'm super excited about. But yeah, so since 1978, I mean, so much has changed, right? So you guys transitioned to 3D design and CAD really in the past, I guess, 10 years, you'd say, or
Really, right now we're actually going through some challenges of getting this structural work from kind of a STAD model to transition to 2D drawings and then back into like a 3D Tekla file for that manufacturing. For our own internal 3D design, we've been working with the Inventor suite. So we were doing Autodesk Inventor, and then most recently our company's transitioned to doing SolidWorks, and I forget who the overarching owner of that group is. But yeah, I mean, 3D is the future. Like you can look at old drawings from the past in 2D, and they're obviously worth 1,000 words. But being able to visually show someone in 3 dimensions what they're going to get provides like another level of sophistication on the sales side, and also allows you to show the client more nuance to what you're providing, right?
Mhm.
So, like for example, you manufacture a large valve, right? It's just something that lets material go in and out. In a 2D drawing, you kind of just see it in space, like here's a rectangular piece and here's a square, right? And you don't really see the nuance of how, like for us, a value add we have is externally removable parts, and you see that on a drawing and it's okay. But if you're able to kind of rotate it and show the client why it is from a 2D to a 3D space, it just in my career the past 10 years as we've transitioned from 2D to 3D, that's really helped us explain to clients, and even from some support issues, and we'll go on and let you have more questions.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. And so today, I know like you're using it within sales, but it because I know your sales process is really back and forth. So today, from what I understand, you guys have been using SolidWorks, like pulling it up on a screen, sharing screen, kind of walking people through the.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, for example, like there's a in it was funny that goes into the call we had on Monday. I had a bunch of models open, and the client was saying like, "Wow, your computer's going to crash for that many models," right? I mean, that was literally as it was discussed, and I was like, "No, I'm using this really cool platform called Ventana." And when you do that in like the sales meetings, like yeah, you can, but typically even if you have it done in 3D, you'll render it into just like a snippet, right? Because it's so difficult to share those files because of the large file size, right? As you know, we've discussed.
Yeah.
So when you do that from the sales process, it's one thing, and then even on the manufacturing process, right? Of like how you're showing it to people, you can give them a 3D render and then the 2D drawings.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And yeah, I mean that's our whole mission. So like industrial engineer, I was like, this is insane. We have all these amazing, beautiful CAD 3D files. We
Yes.
can't show them to anyone.
Of course, yeah, and that's the thing is, that's kind of the biggest thing that we've talked about, right? Is we spend so much time and effort and hundreds of hours developing these beautiful 3D models, right? You see them, you can just Google it, right? Stat file, get the beautiful colors, it looks great. But when it goes to actually presenting it to stakeholders, accounting teams, management teams, those aren't as readily accessible as you've experienced, right? Or if you're presenting in meetings, for this on Monday, it was a technical follow-up, right? So in the bid, you asked about the bidding process. So we submitted a bid with general drawings, right? 2D drawings that go with what we're going to supply, and then they want to go through the bid. So if I had to go through each individual 2D drawing, it would take a lot of time and effort. But what I did is right in the beginning of the meeting, I opened up the Ventana file and I said, all right, let's walk through this proposal, and I can show you all these little nuance, and you can say, oh, this is even though it's a whole page drawing, it's like, one little widget, and like, oh, we can just move on from that, right? It's not like this big thing that needs more of like, oh, we need to get a crane, right? And that's part of that discussion. So yeah, perfect.
Very cool. That's awesome. And so it definitely in like the sales process and kind of explaining like to your point, like the technical walkthrough, that makes a lot of sense. Have you seen like other areas of the business benefit from using 3D or like wanting to use 3D files in different places besides the engineering and sales team?
I mean, the biggest one we've discussed is training, onboarding new hires. I mean, when you have people that are experienced, right, like they don't necessarily need to, but when you bring someone in that's new and you're trying to explain to them what it is, having that file, like we showed, a project manager just signed up and they're like, well, what is a loadout? And we could say, oh, here's all these drawings, but we just flicked it. And she was like, oh, perfect. Like it immediately registered a lot faster because I guess our brain, again, people way smarter than me would know, like, I assume that there's something with our brains in 3 dimensions, right? Like it just process again, like someone, probably a LinkedIn Live with,
I'll bring on a psychologist next week.
Yeah. So like how 3D rendering affects, the knowledge, comprehension factor.
Yeah, I mean, there has been studies. I think PwC published a study, one of those consulting firms, but yeah, people learn faster and retain more knowledge when it's with like 3D or augmented reality because it feels more like your brain remembers it as a real experience versus just like reading or watching a video. So you kind of like, it like gets stored in your brain as like, oh, I actually like did this process as opposed to just like reading about it.
Yes. So no, I mean, honestly, but here's the thing is like, we all go through this world where we're working with less people and we have to get people trained up faster. And when we live in a more complex environment, like I've said, we've only, used it limitedly, but, obviously my first instinct was, training and just bringing people in and explaining it besides, the sales is saying, this is what you're going to be working on. This is that. One of our other systems engineers, we were discussing this. If you have like a hydraulic power unit, for example, there's a bunch of valves that are on top of allow the systems to work. And one of the things that myself and my colleague Matt were saying is because it's so easy to send this file, we could send it to a remote technician and say, this is what you're looking at. Count 1, 2, 3 on this side. This is what you should be looking at. Take a picture for us as a remote engineer. We can then troubleshoot it from a more distant location than a remote mine site and say, okay, can we fix this while you're sitting there? Or do we need to UPS red a spare part to get there tomorrow? And that in critical, and like we work in mission critical industries, that, we've talked about KPIs, like, does that save you 6 hours? And if your plant's running at, $10,000 a minute or whatever, right? These are huge facilities. That adds like that just ability to get it, whether it's internal stakeholders, right? Like if you're the client themselves and using it, or you're an external company that has service arms, right? Because we're a manufacturer, we're sales, service, and manufacturing. So we take the whole product life cycle from inception when it's bid to me, then from when I pass it to the execution team within the managers, to then the fabrication shop, then the execution side, right, of like building it, and then the post commissioning and ongoing love.
Yeah, ongoing love. I like that better than maintenance.
Yeah.
No, that's great, and that's often that operation maintenance is also another like critical breakdown sometimes of like you're out in the field. You probably do not have a beefy computer with you because you're like on
Mountain
equipment.
Tide. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got your phone, so you need to be able to pull something up on your phone that's going to give you enough understanding of like what you're looking for and products. So that's where like some optimized, lightweight, like web-based 3D makes sense. But I know there have been some challenges, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on IP comes up a lot, like the 3D CAD. They're the intellectual property of your company. Some people get worried about like sharing or using. Like, how have you seen that come up?
I feel that this product, in a lot of ways, like I've navigated that because we have a unique product in that it has some just geometric nuance, right? The way that we kind of build it, but without measurements and without real hard numbers, it's just somewhat of a cartoon, a beautiful and like detailed and like to scale and all that cartoon. But at the end of the day, if you're going to put that much effort into re-engineering something that's in this 3D file, you might as well just take a tape measure and go out to the site and just do it that way.
Yeah.
And do the same kind of thing, right? So, I've come across that. And one of the things that I felt is when you give native CAD files in any situation, even in an NDA environment, there's always a opportunity for nefarious actors. We've seen it all across our industries, whether it's, high tech stuff or low tech stuff, right? It just happens that, people come in and you have to prevent it. But I think that using a viewer type of thing like this, that kind of adds a limitation of how much and I think there are maybe ways you can dumb down the CAD files, but the way that it's worked with you all of just seamlessly taking our native detailed files, making it this way, I'm truly more comfortable sharing your files in many instances than I am sharing sometimes I'll get it with a drafts person, say, just delete these, put it on the 2D, and we all do that, right? Anyone you talk to in our industry has that, change this, fudge this number, make it. But with yours, I'm pretty confident. I'm like, look, share it. If you want to, right?
Yeah. We automatically are deleting stuff and that like remove obstructed geometry. So it's like just the shell.
Yeah.
So in the sense, it'd be the same as if you go out to the job site and are taking pictures and measuring with tape measure.
It's the same, like, until you get down, like, certain situations, like, I have like measurements in my brain, right? Like beam sizes and things like that you just don't want in there, and you don't have to worry about it. But in other situations, you can kind of determine what those beam sizes are.
Yeah. So it kind of depends. That's awesome. But yeah, it sounds like you guys have gotten a lot of value out of 3D. What are some of the challenges you've seen in, scaling up 3D in your organization?
Wow. Legacy challenges, I'd say, are the biggest one. It's like, because we've been doing this, so our company started, gosh, I'd probably get yelled at, 1956, I want to say, is when Kanal was first started, and we got the loadouts in 78. So we've had drawings for this many years, and it's funny, we already had one technology challenge. So one of the highest, I think, a .tiff file, I think, is like a really beautiful photo. So we scanned a lot of our paper drawings in .tiff. Well, as .tiffs become older and not as stable, TIFFs can cause computers to crash. So we've gone from like, the monocle and and the drawing on paper, right, to then scanning, then to go into like rudimentary CAD. So then we kind of took those and made CAD files in the 90s, those older files, and then those have now been migrated, and a lot of it's like that would be, I think, the biggest challenge in 3D is how far back do you want to go from like a support standpoint, and then really when do you pull the band-aid off? Because
Yeah,
then
to
you
do
have
all 3D moving forward. Yeah.
moving forward, and then you have staffing concerns, obviously, because then you have to have staff trained in whatever platform you choose. Like I think several of my colleagues had like a 1 week SolidWorks training a few months ago, and it was like every engineer, right? That because it's a whole new platform, right? Like they
Yeah.
all have to get it, and it's like that's part of the process. So our whole business essentially had to, you know,
Switch. Yeah.
right. So that I guess would be the biggest, and I think that that's with any switchover ERP system. You if someone said, I don't know if you use Google Suite or
Yeah.
Office, right? Like that would be a big switch just in that manner. Those are tech switching costs.
Right. Yeah. But that training is real because at the end of the day, it's on top of someone's regular job, right?
Yeah.
They have their regular job, and then you're asking them to switch software. And often I know you're now part of American Equipment, and that usually happens. It's like lots of changes, including we use this software stack, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But and that's where I'm really excited about AI. I know people are kind of afraid of it a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to help speed up some of that 3D work and just help make it easier for people to use some of the software. I really don't think at the end of the day it's going to take a bunch of jobs. It's going to take away some of the tedious, boring parts of our jobs and speed it up. But
that's you bring up an interesting thing, and this is why we're friends for a while. We can kind of go these rabbit trails. You made me think about it in just a totally different context. Is like when you go through big switchovers for like databases, right? Like there's a lot of manual stuff, which is why usually your IT staff is totally panicked from whatever 5 p.m. shut on the weekend till Office opens up on Monday, and you have better migrated. We did a ERP migration, right? So I guess AI in that way, I hadn't thought about that as being able to kind of massage a lot of those like more tedious and rigid parts of just any of these things. Okay, well, that's fascinating, because then I'm thinking if you have kind of old CAD files, they can massage it a little bit and get you, as we've discussed, like 80% there, right? If there's that, at least you're there, but you have then you can hand it to someone who's a skilled employee, or
right.
say, finish these last things that the computer couldn't. Okay, no, that's actually brilliant, right? So and that's makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I mean, your employees who know the product, they're going to know it better. AI can't get there yet, but yeah, that's where I'm excited to just exactly 80% of the way there, and then finish it. So I think there's going to be a lot of interesting new products coming out later this year. A lot of the companies have been working on automating 3D, like all the big ones, Google, Meta, like everybody. So it'll be interesting. But going back to specifically in the industrial space, so excited about Mine Expo next week. I know we've got a cool demo there of your layout, your loadout. But yeah, any shout outs you want to give for Mine Expo or events to check out?
Oh man, I mean, I had these chaotic meetings the last 2 days. I'm catching my breath. I had this bid due yesterday at 5 and that technical meeting on Monday, then Mine Expo, and it's just going to be wild. There's going to be, thousands of people. I think that I'm excited to see how this model works. I think it's going to be incredible, because I think I showed you before, we had a 3D printed loadout to show this, right? And that was a physical thing that got a lot of people to the booth. I think that once we have people scanning the QR code and having the model and walking it through on the screen and showing, I think that it's going to have an insane amount of traction, because of just that it's cool. It's honestly just like, it looks cool. Even if someone is like a little kid, there's been many times, and we've talked about this, that I've shown my loadout or, this product to just randoms that have no, just random people at the bar, right? Just like, look at this cool gadget I got. And to every single one of them, they think that that's cool, because maybe there's like, you think about kids, right? There's like something in our back to our primal sense that just enjoys playing with bulldozers and end loaders and excavators and loading systems, right? So even if you're stuck, for my dear accounting friends, working in spreadsheets all day long, you still like to look at the uh, the big the big machines, right? And that's where you and Ben have shown me some cool ones that you all worked on and some really fun machines. So yeah, my next was gonna be good. After that, wow, I think that there's something we're doing, but I think that like there's Pack Expo, there's other ones that I think have applicable things to this product, because we do like drum fillers, for example, like filling 55-gallon totes, and those are essentially mini loadouts. So there's a bunch of intricate pieces that you can't just haul to a show. So if you do like a drum filler, that could work too. So yeah, no, so my next will be fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, do you have like, any advice for companies that are like in the process of moving towards 3D, like of things to look out for, or what's, been helpful? I know it often starts with the engineering team, but then it's like trying to like how do you get the different parts of the organization to realize they can also like utilize the technology?
It drives revenue. I mean, honestly, that's what I've presented to everybody in our company. The ability of this technology to generate one more sale is all that we're after, right? So even if you have the best mousetrap, if you can't sell it to someone, it doesn't matter, right? So getting in 3D there's no option. It's the future. It is what it is, right? Like we all move forward. So start now, truly, because the longer you wait and the longer you take to start introducing it to your team and getting the more less agreeable people on board with the process, the less painful it'll be. Because there's people that are, even me, we're all somewhat stuck in our ways. So getting those first movers and making that is really good and important. And as someone on the sales side, like, you have to sell to keep a business going. Like that's the rule number one, right? Like you can, like, if no one's buying your product, and 3D is what many top end sophisticated clients are expecting. Because when you get to the Googles of the world, the Metas of the world, they're seeing this in their own world, in their own application. So they want to work with other companies of their stature. And if you walk into a company that is, you're there to impress them, right? That's what I did on Monday. I was trying to impress them with our, it's a competition in the true sense. Are you up to speed, right? Like there's only one Super Bowl champ. There's only one Stanley Cup champ. There's only one winner for all these projects. And if you don't present it and win, it doesn't matter if your engineers spend 88 million hours building the best, the most efficient, precise system. If you can't articulate it to the client, it won't help. And this is what is a differentiator, this tool.
For sure. Yeah. And I actually was talking about that with a friend the other day. It's like if you don't know your product, whatever you're selling, if you don't know it and can communicate that well and teach the prospect enough about how it works, and it doesn't matter. And it just kind of goes back to that training and making it easier for people to understand.
It also helps people like me walk through the project. So even if you're not like, I don't remember everything as we're talking, right? It's all fast paced. We're on camera, people are there working, right? So sometimes you forget that, there's one thing. And then I think we've all gone through it where we've left a meeting and we go, oh, I wish I said this in that situation. Where if you have this type of model, you really, like, as we've talked with hotspots, right? It really doesn't allow you to miss out on key things that you want to touch, even if you have the best notes to make sure you don't a silly goose, right?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, any I know we kind of like touched on a lot of different stuff, but Are there any like trends you're seeing in the industry?
I
Or
have to say it because you're actually going to catch me missing something. One of my things is you said, what's the challenge about doing it? Licensing and access. Typically, you only have certain people that have licenses to show and work on models, as you should. Everybody shouldn't be able to go and open whatever models. So if you're in a meeting, I'm faster than certain people, if you don't have that licensing and access, it doesn't matter, right? So I had that as one of my bullet points to say, as you said, challenges, and then I didn't do it, and I was like, oh, right there. So there's an example of how models and things guide discussions and help people be successful when they otherwise think that they say it all.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So like licensing and role-based access, going back to like that IP question, it's like extremely important. You're right. You don't want everyone to have access to your SolidWorks files, but you need to have those different levels of access to different, we call them like levels of detail of the 3D model. So you can have the cartoony shell, right? Just the outside shell that you're walking people through, and maybe that can be public. And then you've got, maybe a medium model that's got some more intricate, measurements or parts for your technical discussion. And, that's password protected. And then you've got, the vault, which is your SolidWorks files that only your engineers have.
Yeah.
And so, if you are an organization looking at starting to set up so your whole organization can get access and take advantage of 3D, it is important to figure out what system are you going to have in place, what software that can give those different levels of access, for sure.
Yeah, and again, back to a benefit, right? Is like we're having this discussion is like that right there is something that, administrative access, how you do it. It's yeah, so like I said, even as you're like, what else do you want to bring up? I was like, oh shoot, I forgot to say that.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, yeah. Well, I'm so excited to see you all at MINExpo next week, and really appreciate you taking the time. It's just so helpful to hear how actual companies are using 3D technology, struggles, benefits, all that. So
the pleasure is honestly all mine. It's been a fantastic learning experience. How to take our 3D work that we've done and share it with the world, right? So like this has been, truly my pleasure. Yeah, so thank you.
All right, awesome. Well, I'll see you next week. And if anyone else is at MINExpo, come by. What's your booth?
Oh, I forget. I'll be in trouble.
I think it's 2651, but just look up Kanawa.